Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Topics with Mr. Javadi. Um, I try to talk about different kinds of topics, kind of like I did when I was in the classroom. And, today we have the topic of public service and a little bit of an insight into that as it relates to Senator Ben Nighthorse Campbell. And I have a very special guest, a wonderful human being, great guest. And he happens to be David Devendorf, the vice president of Ben Nighthorse Consultants. And so, without further ado, hello to you and thank you for being here.
Hello, Payman. How are you? It's good to see you.
I'm fine. Thank you very much. I've had the allergies, but I'm sure a lot of people relate to that
Oh, yeah.
with the way it's been here lately. But I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. So, I guess before we start, I didn't really ask you this before, but it dawns on me that it's kind of important. What do you do with the Ben Nighthorse Consultants in Pueblo?
Well, we have a small consulting business that's primarily Senator Campbell and myself. And we, spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., and we made a lot of friends. And Senator Campbell, of course, when he was the only Native American and the Congress, House or Senate. There's five there now, four in the House and one in the Senate. But Indian issues have always been close to his heart, and so we primarily represent tribal interests and carry those issues to members of Congress, House and Senate, and try to educate them on Indian country.
That's very interesting. And how long has this firm been in place?
Senator Campbell and I left the Senate in January 2005. We went to a large law firm, Holland and Knight, at the time. Neither of us were lawyers, but we worked as lobbyists at Holland and Knight. And we did that for 7 years until 2012. And in 2012, we decided to form Ben Nighthorse Consultants and concentrate primarily on Indian country issues.
And folks can find that website just by Googling Nighthorse Consultants, Pueblo, Colorado. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How long has it been? I know it's been a long time, Mr. Devendorf, but how long has it been really since you've known Ben Nighthorse Campbell?
39 years.
Wow.
I first met him in 1986 as a volunteer on his initial Senate campaign. A friend of mine, Carlos Alvarez, was just graduated from Notre Dame, and he was working on the campaign, and he asked me if I'd like to come help. So I helped, and in 98, I signed up as a volunteer again, and in 88, and then in 1990, I was his deputy campaign manager, and I've worked in a full-time capacity with him ever since.
And he became senator first. What year was that?
1992. He ran for the United States.
That's what I thought. Early 90s. Yeah.
Senator Tim Worth was retiring, and then decided to run for the Senate.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. So that really has been quite a while.
It's been a good run.
Yeah. A lot of history, a lot of experience, a lot of legacy. But anyway, if you were to, the next question I have for you is, what year did you start in public service?
Well, that would have been when I started working for Ben full time on the. Excuse my shaking. I've got Parkinson's.
No, that's fine. God bless you.
It just comes with the package. But I started working on Ben's House of Representatives staff in 1990, after the 1990 campaign. So it would have been 1991. And we've been working in public service. He's been working in public service since 1982. And prior to that, he was a school teacher. He was a sheriff's deputy. He was a
Wow.
military. So you could say he's spent a lifetime in public service. I have spent since 1991 in public service.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that makes both of you political heavyweights.
Yeah, he's a political heavyweight. He's well respected on both sides of the aisle.
Well, and I think of primarily, I think of that solid experience, which it sounds like it's been there in full colors. Um, but let me also go to this. Um, as you've known him all these years, what do you think makes him such a special person? Three things that would characterize him.
You know, first of all, Ben Ben's what you see is what you get. He's authentic.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't sugarcoat things. He's tells you exactly what he's thinking, what he's feeling, and why. And I think that people appreciate that. Second of all, he's been successful at everything that he's ever attempted, and largely because his wife Linda, almost 60 years, puts it. He puts blinders on and focuses. He's, you know, you hear the saying that nothing is worth, if anything's worth doing, it's worth doing well. Well,
Yeah.
for Ben, it's if anything that's worth doing, it's worth being the best at. And he becomes singularly focused on whatever he was doing. You know, whether that was, he in 1960 he moved to Tokyo, Japan, because the Olympic Games were coming in '64, and he was the U.S. judo champion. But he
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel like he had good enough competition here. The best team in the world was at Meiji University in Japan. So he went there not knowing the language, spent 4 years as a special research student so that he could train with the best. And he went to the Olympic Games, captained the U.S. team in '64. When he was raising quarter horses, it wasn't enough just to win ribbons. He's raised a supreme grand champion. And
Mm-hmm.
when he was uh, in politics, it was not a matter of just making a good run. It didn't matter unless you won, and then you better have a plan for what you needed to pass and what you wanted to do to change. And he passed more legislation than every Colorado senator combined since 1972.
That's just amazing. Just amazing. I mean, the background is amazing. The experience and the service is amazing. I told my brother who's in martial arts. Well, he was in
Yes,
martial arts. He was in martial arts. He hasn't been in a while. But I told him about that whole judo situation and the
yeah,
trip to Japan and all of that. My brother was highly impressed. Yeah, yeah, that just shows you that he meant what he said and he worked at it. Very patriotic. These are all just amazing, amazing qualities.
yeah. He
Um,
wore his country's uniform in the Korean War and wore the uniform again in the Olympic Games.
mhm. Yeah, that is a wonderful description. Also, very, very patriotic. Um, what are three achievements in public service that he attained while he was in office?
Uh, in the 108th Congress, uh, Ben passed more legislation than every member of the United States House and Senate, all 535 members. He passed more legislation during that Congress. That would have been
Mm-hmm.
the 1997-98
Mm-hmm.
Congress. Um, as I said, he passed more legislation than every Colorado senator in the last 50 years, and he was the only senator to pass, only member of Congress to pass two major uh, museums: the National Museum of the American Indian and the National Law Enforcement Officers Museum.
Wow, wow,
And
that is,
that
yeah.
was another that he was
Mhm.
very proud of.
That's phenomenal. And then what about his legacy for Native Americans? I'm sure you can comment on that. Yeah, I don't know the
He was
just
the
yeah, yeah.
Senate Committee on Affairs,
Uh-huh.
and during that time, the Indian Affairs Committee is the only nonpartisan committee in the
Mhm.
Senate. They don't have a chairman and a ranking member. They have a chairman and a vice chairman. So the leader of the opposing party is vice chairman as opposed to a ranking member. When the chairman can't oversee a hearing, the vice chairman does, as opposed to passing it down to the next senior majority party member. And so Ben's counterpart during his time on the Indian Affairs Committee was Senator Inouye of Hawaii, Democrat from Hawaii. And they were both of like mind. As a Republican from Colorado, he switched parties in '95 from Democrat to Republican. Dan Inouye was a Democrat from Hawaii. They were very good friends. Dan Inouye is one of two people that I've ever heard Senator Campbell refer to as a prince of a human being. And they
Mhm.
made it they their goal that no major piece of legislation should pass through the U.S. Senate without them attaching an Indian component to it, whether it was a
Yes,
major
yes.
transportation bill, an education bill, anything of that nature. Their law enforcement bill, there should be an Indian component passed on everything. And they passed more pro-Indian legislation during their time in the Senate as chairman, vice chairman, than in any other time in American history.
Well, that really, really sings to my heart and to my ears because I happen to believe that out of all the groups, and that's not to say others aren't important, but out of all the groups out there vocalizing, I think the Native Americans sort of have somewhat of a priority. And
Oh yeah,
this really, to me, is very special. And of course, partly because I also taught on an Indian reservation. So I have a lot of respect for Mr. Campbell just based on those things. And I was on the reservation in the 90s, early 90s. So that's about the time that he was serving. No, that's wonderful. That's
oh
just
yeah. He served in the House from January of '87 to January of '93, and in the Senate from '93 to 2005.
mhm.
And prior to that, he was in the Colorado State Legislature for 4 years.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. Well, to sort of wrap this up, I just have a couple of things. One of them is if he was to talk to young people, I know he worked as a teacher and he was a counselor and things like that. But if he was to talk to young people today about getting involved in public service, what do you think he would say to them?
I guarantee you, he would tell them jump in with both feet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, Indian country especially has the highest rate of suicide, the highest rate of alcohol abuse, the highest rate of drug abuse, and it's because people think that, oh well, I've seen the Indian country, they have all these casinos now, they're rich, or I've seen heard that they have oil and gas on their reservations, they're rich. I can tell you that there's 574 native nations in this country.
Mm-hmm.
About 50 of them are really making significant money from casinos. Maybe 7 to 10 of them are making significant money from natural resources. That's 10%. 90% of Indian country is still very poor and suffers from all the social ills that come with poverty. The federal government made over 330 treaties with tribes, and at one time or another, they broke every one. And the treaty system, in and of itself, will move these folks onto reservations that are on rocky land that's not worth farming or anything else. So they tell them, but don't worry about it. We'll take care of you. We'll provide for your health care. Their health care is horrible. We'll provide for your food. Well, they get commodities of starchy foods that you know is RFK Jr. now is preaching to everybody that's like putting poison in your body, and and there's no economic development on tribal lands. A
Mhm.
handful of tribes have made well with economic development and agriculture. Most of them can't, and so you by just giving them a fish instead of teaching them to fish over generations and generations, it's destroyed the work ethic on Indian country, and they've got a lot of problems, and they need to be a priority of the government. At one time, the country was theirs,
That's right.
and they serve in the United States military. They serve in the United States military in higher percentages than any other ethnic group in America, and they're terribly patriotic. They believe in this country, and the country owes them something in return, and
I
that's
agree.
that's what we're trying to do. Is
Yeah, I
uh,
agree to. Yeah, I agree to the full. Go ahead. You were saying?
that well, I think that kind of sums up. If you don't mind me asking, which reservation did you teach on?
I was on the Navajo reservation,
Where,
a place called Ganado.
oh,
Yeah, I
uh-huh.
I spent 6 years there. That's really close to Window Rock. Um, and then it's
Yeah,
northeast Arizona, and but it was also very close to Colorado. So it was close to the Four Corners. So I loved it. I loved it
yeah.
all.
Senator,
Yeah.
Senator Campbell lives down in the Four Corners, and Nighthorse Ranch is in Ignacio on the Southern Ute Reservation, although he's
Oh,
Northern
that.
Cheyenne by
Oh
birth.
man.
And,
Yeah. I
and so
love that area. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I love that area.
we spent a lot of
Yeah.
time.
If folks want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, we have a website, BenNighthorseConsultants.com, and my phone number is on there, and they can give us a call. They can also email us at nighthorseconsultants@gmail.com, all in word, Nighthorse with an N.
Okay.
And we're always happy to look and see if there's something that we can help folks with.
Well, and I would definitely say that that is very true because I've done that myself. I've called and you've all been very, very helpful, including you yourself. So, uh, I think you were trying to say something. Maybe I interrupted. What were you saying?
Well, I was just going to say, Senator Campbell had a very varied background that made him identify with an awful lot of people.
Yes.
Obviously, Indian country is near and dear to his heart, but his father was alcoholic. His mother had tuberculosis as a kid. He spent a lot of time in Catholic orphanages, and his a lot of dysfunction in his family. His only sister took her own life, but everything seemed to just make him stronger. He dropped out of school, dropped out of high school, and went into the Air Force during the Korean War. Came back from Korea, got his GED, and went to college on the GI Bill at San Jose State. Became a national champion in judo at San Jose. Drove a truck to help put himself through college because there was no athletic scholarships for judo. He had to pay his way through school while he competed. So he drove a truck, and then he went to, as I said, trained in Japan, went to the Olympic Games, came back and took a job as a coach of the U.S. team before becoming a sheriff's deputy in Sacramento County. From there, he was a prison counselor, and then he ultimately became a high school teacher for kind of hard knocks kids that had gotten
Yeah.
in some trouble, and
Right.
and then he became a horse trainer, and ultimately moved to Colorado, and was the trainer at Sky Ute Downs on the Southern Ute Indian Reservation at the time that he went to give a seconding speech for a friend of his that was running for sheriff in La Plata County, Colorado. And after he gave that speech, the folks in the Democratic Party in La Plata County said, "Did you ever think about running for office?" He said, "No." They said, "Well, we got a open state's House seat. We're running against an incumbent. Want to know if you might be willing to take the challenge?" He said, "Well, would it cost much? No. Would it take much time? No. You know, lies, lies, lies." But he talked to
Mhm.
Linda. Linda said, "Yeah, why don't you take a run for it?" So he did one outworked the other guy and won against an incumbent and held 2 terms in the state house. Same thing happened while he was in the state house. He was voted one of Colorado's 10 best legislators by the Denver Post. And they came to him and said, "We got a guy who's incumbent in Congress. Want you to run against him." And he ran against Mike Strang and won, and uh, became the third district congressman. Uh, got 2 re-election bids, and then he was thinking, well, he might run for the House one more time and go home and just keep ranching. But they had other plans. Senator Tim Worth retired, and the Senate seat came up. He ran for the U.S. Senate against a 3-term in the primary against 3-term Colorado governor Dick Lamb, and beat Dick, and faced Terry Considine in the general election and won that election by 11 points and became a U.S. Senator. In 1995, he switched parties from Democrat to Republican, and everybody said the Democrats will hate you and the Republicans will never trust you. You'll never win again. But in 1998, he won by the largest margin in Colorado history as a
Wow.
Republican, and held one more term before he retired to private life, and we've been lobbying on behalf of Indian country ever since.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. I mean, like Ronald Reagan said, those who don't believe in heroes, they don't know where to look. And
Well,
so, yeah, here we are. We have Ben and we have you, and both of you, in my mind, are heroes. So that's awesome.
well, very kind of you. And as a gentleman who taught on the Navajo reservation, that makes you a hero in my eyes, too.
Thank you.
I appreciate everything you do. God
Thank you.
bless you.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Aho.